The tampon king gets back in the ring. I speak of former VP nominee Tim Walz. He joined Beto O'Rourke at a Texas town hall last night, and the estrogen levels were enough to give Chuck Norris menstrual cramps. I wonder, is our strength our diversity?
Our strength is our diversity. We've been talking about this for years as a country of immigrants, and we let them define the issue on immigration. We let them define the issue on D&I.
But I'm thinking there's only one explanation for Tim spewing nonsense like this. Time of the month.
What happens when a smug TV host goes head-to-head with a governor who still looks like he's searching for his car keys? You get Greg Gutfeld slicing Tim Walz into confetti, shredding him like a flimsy cardboard cutout, hurled into a raging hurricane. From failed policies to embarrassing political theater, Gutfeld spins Minnesota's so-called leadership into a stand-up routine that feels less like a debate and more like a demolition derby on national TV. Don't blink, because this takedown scorches hotter than Walz's frozen approval ratings, and every punchline lands harder than the last blow, leaving nothing but smoldering wreckage in its path.
Tim Walz continues to be criticized for embellishing his rank in service. After it came out over the weekend, he once claimed to be an official bikini inspector. Walz's direct superior in the National Guard says Walz knew his unit was about to deploy to Iraq and went behind the back of his superior officer to resign. When reached for comment, Walz yelled, "Hey, look over there," and then ran away. Although Walz's actions look bad to veterans, Dems say these revelations could really help him win the coward vote.
Oh, Tim Walz. If political leadership were a buffet, he'd be the lukewarm mashed potatoes nobody wanted, yet somehow ended up scooped onto the plate anyway. Bland, pointless, and impossible to ignore, he just sits there while everyone wonders who invited him. Then in storms Greg Gutfeld, swinging sarcasm like a chainsaw inside a fireworks factory, ripping through Walz's endless blunders with the speed and precision of a comedian on overdrive. This isn't governing, it's second-rate performance art. Not the brilliant kind, but more like finger painting with spoiled mayonnaise, messy, cringeworthy, and unforgettable in the worst way imaginable.
He exploited his military background to cover up his crime. He said it was related to his service and that he actually wasn't drunk. He just misheard the instructions in the drunk test. He blew a super high level. It was like, 0.2, driving 100 miles an hour. And then when he's running for office, he said that he wasn't drunk. I mean, this guy has creep written all over it. He created a snitch line, but lies about his personal infractions. He doesn't even own up to it. This is a guy who pushes a hoax about a sex on a couch, and then the closer you look at him, he's a creepy cuck.
If you're enjoying this takedown, smash that subscribe button right now because it only gets wilder from here. Let's be real. Tim Walz running Minnesota is like watching a substitute teacher hopelessly trying to control a classroom full of caffeinated raccoons bouncing off the walls. He talks like a man who skimmed leadership for dummies in an airport gift shop and decided that was his life's entire playbook. And the execution? Oh, it's flawless. If the mission was to transform the land of 10,000 lakes into the land of 10,000 disasters, then Walz deserves an Olympic gold medal for failure. Every move feels less like leadership and more like a crash course in chaos.
I saw just recently Donald Trump's executive order to make it more difficult, specifically to women, trying to make it more difficult for women to be able to vote. We see one of the first things they do is try and restrict the vote.
Wait, so Trump is making it more difficult for women to vote? How so? Math problems? But it's further proof that the most dangerous thing for a leftist is a follow-up question, which is why you never hear any. But I guess questioning elections is okay now. But the best moment came when Walz forgot who he is.
Greg Gutfeld didn't even have to break a sweat. Roasting Tim Walz is like dunking on a guy who shows up to a job interview in Crocs while blindfolded. It's as if Walz strolled onto the debate stage armed with nothing but a kazoo and a whiteboard scrawled with the word feelings. He practically begged for it, handing Gutfeld a roast platter marked extra crispy, and then leaning in as if to whisper, "Go for the kill." At this point, it's not even satire anymore. It's professional-grade sarcasm warfare. And Walz arrived like a confused kid at arts and crafts, carrying only glitter glue and a participation ribbon, completely out of his depth and ready to be shredded.
Walz is a strange dude.
Oh, he's strange.
He is strange. Him and I are the same age. How does he look so much younger?
No, he's a strange guy.
Strange.
You know, he called up years ago. I was in the White House, and he said, my house is being surrounded by people with American flags. I said, is that a good thing or a bad thing? He said, I think they're going to attack me. This was during the riots and everything else. They were MAGA people. You know, they like the American flag, all right? And they also had Trump. And I said, how do you know? There were about 15,000, he said, could you put out a word like that I'm your friend? I don't even know him, but that's the only time I ever spoke to him. And if you look back long ago, tweets, before Truth, tweets, long ago, I put out a statement, he's a good man, the governor, he's on our side. I didn't know him, but I didn't want him to get hurt. And everybody put down their flags and they left. Yes. He said it was a miracle. He said it was a miracle.
Let's talk about the economy. Tim Walz looked at inflation, unemployment, and businesses fleeing Minnesota, and somehow thought the answer was more taxes. Tax the air, tax the smiles, maybe even tax the thought of moving to South Dakota. Nothing was off limits. Companies are escaping the state like it's a haunted mansion built from climate mandates and endless social justice slideshows. And then Gutfeld ripped into Walz's economic flops like a raccoon tearing through a compost bin at midnight. He practically shouted, how do you make California look like a capitalist paradise by comparison? Because under Walz, the only things growing are stacks of government paperwork and the pounding migraines of the middle class. Now let's talk crime. Walz treats public safety the way a toddler treats matches. Optimistic, clueless, and always ending in sirens. His master plan: blame society, hold hands, and hope criminals are inspired by interpretive dance, like handing out scented candles in the middle of a 5-alarm fire.
Going on the same bad cocaine, but Kamala can't speak, he can't speak, Biden was so high he couldn't remember anything. Like, this is literally the dumbest administration of all time. Why is he talking?
It really is the ultimate clown show. And I said this in the 5. He's a clown without a circus.
He doesn't even need makeup.
He's roaming the terrain. Is there some carnival that I could work for? Yeah. I'll wash your windows.
He's a rogue clown.
Yes.
Who is just an inconsequential footnote to vice presidential history.
Yes.
No one will remember his name on trivia night, and that's going to be in 3 months.
Meanwhile, Gutfeld is busy turning crime stats into comedy gold, practically holding up a Minnesota map with "Here be carjackings" stamped across the Twin Cities. He compared Walz's crime plan to a mall cop trying to stop a riot armed with nothing but a kazoo and a clipboard, hopeless and laughable. If Walz were running national security, the country would be brushing up on Russian by next week. And then came education, a glittering dumpster fire if there ever was one. Walz, once a teacher himself, somehow decided classrooms should be transformed into workshops of woke word salad. Forget math and science. Kids now earn grades for spotting microaggressions and building safe spaces out of popsicle sticks. Gutfeld didn't just mock it, he torched it. He joked, the only exam students are acing is the art of being offended. Under Walz, schools look less like places of learning and more like bad theater productions. Detention is gone. Now it's replaced with participation trophies and TikTok therapy sessions, while academics vanish into thin air.
I'm especially talking about these old white guys who seem to disappoint us on a regular basis in this country.
Dude. You're an old white guy. And you're right, you are a huge disappointment. I guess hating himself is the first thing he's nailed correctly. Because Walz saying old white men suck isn't a political stance. It's his confession. Walz calling people old and white is like Maxine Waters making fun of someone for shopping at Wigs R Us. He wants to execute more DEI policies, and Trump wants to execute murderous gang members. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Can you see the difference?
And let's not forget the COVID fiasco. Tim Walz acted like the pandemic was his big audition for America's next top authoritarian. He shut down everything, dragging bar owners to court, fining churches into the ground. But protests? Oh, those were suddenly essential. Apparently, the virus came with a political filter. Who knew? Gutfeld devoured that hypocrisy, pointing out how Walz canceled Grandma's bingo night while throwing open the streets for demonstrations, as long as someone was chanting Marxist slogans with a papier-mâché puppet in tow. That wasn't public health. It was political theater with a clipboard. And then came the budget surplus. Minnesota had a mountain of extra cash so huge even Walz couldn't pretend it didn't exist. But instead of giving it back to taxpayers, the very people who earned it, he burned through it like monopoly money at a government garage sale. More bureaucracy, more diversity consultants, and maybe even a taxpayer-funded mural of himself staring off into the horizon like a wannabe statesman.
Says that Walz lost, but one of them, Politico says, is like Walz's wide eyes showed his passion and emotional intensity. Can we show that? There is his wide eyes. That humans would widen their eyes to convey that danger is close. What emotion are you getting from that?
Sorry. Still. That was every...
Gutfeld nearly fell over laughing from the sheer irony. He quipped that Walz blowing a massive surplus was like handing a toddler a credit card and telling him to only buy the essentials. Sure, Tim, because obviously the Department of Overregulation desperately needed a shiny espresso machine and an executive yoga retreat in the name of equity. Walz has turned red tape into a full-contact sport. In Minnesota, you can't even run a lemonade stand without 14 permits, a background check, and a pronoun declaration. It's Soviet-style governance dressed up with slick branding, and somehow delivering even worse results. Gutfeld painted it perfectly. Walz twisting, turning, and stumbling through policy like he's auditioning for Olympic-level bureaucratic gymnastics, every move more absurd than the last. And then comes his odd obsession with Gavin Newsom. Walz clings to California's governor like a star-struck fanboy, determined to turn Minneapolis into San Francisco's colder, clumsier cousin, and failing spectacularly.
Tim Walz vomits more nonsense.
I called Donald Trump a wannabe dictator. It's because he is. It's because he is. Maybe it's an adult like Donald Trump, you bully the out of him back. This is a weak, cruel man that takes it out and punches down on people.
Wow. Oh. Jamie.
What a
Painful,
douchebag,
huh?
Greg. That was absolutely painful. He was the keynote speaker at this conference. Can you imagine having to watch more of that?
He watches Gavin Newsom torch California like a scented candle made of bad policy and thinks, perfect, let's add frostbite and subtract jobs. It's the West Coast disaster script, only performed in snow boots with higher taxes and fewer opportunities. Gutfeld went in for the jugular, saying, if Gavin Newsom is a shampoo ad with the ego of a Bond villain, then Tim Walz is the clueless understudy who wandered in halfway through and started improvising in Pig Latin. Walz struts around like the confused offspring of Bernie Sanders and a malfunctioning traffic light, pretending to be a progressive savior while tripping over every agency he touches. And don't even start on transportation. Walz pitched a multi-million-dollar bullet train that might be ready about the same time dinosaurs return. Meanwhile, Minnesota's roads resemble a post-apocalyptic Mario Kart track, with drivers praying their suspension systems survive the week. But Walz, he's too busy hawking fantasy trains like he's auditioning for Hogwarts, while real infrastructure crumbles like stale gluten-free toast.
So the tone of the media was one of sadness, not reporting Walz's loss, but mourning it. Now, the truth is that a VP debate is like a colonoscopy. It's important and necessary, but that doesn't mean you want to watch it.
Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Even a deer in the headlights is screaming, "Get the out of the way, dude!" It's no wonder they don't do follow-up questions with Democrats. They're like the top layer of day-old skimpy bean dip. What's underneath, you don't want to see.
Gutfeld rolled his eyes so hard they nearly registered on the Richter scale. The sarcasm was so heavy, it deserved its own zip code. Brilliant plan, Tim. toss common sense in the trash and pour billions into Elon Musk fan fiction on rails. Because nothing screams fiscal genius like a bullet train to nowhere, moving slower than a DMV line and about as useful as a solar-powered flashlight in January. Then came Walz's media appearances, a spectacle in themselves. Picture a man cosplaying as a capable leader, speaking with all the clarity of a dial-up modem stuck underwater, droning in endless circles like a GPS forever stuck on recalculating. Off stage, his advisors wave flashcards and shoot off metaphorical flares, desperately praying he can land a single coherent point. Gutfeld shredded it all like a drunken poet at open mic night. Watching Walz explain policy is like seeing a raccoon attempt Morse code with oven mitts. Chaotic, confusing, and somehow still convinced he nailed it. It's not leadership. It's verbal gymnastics nobody asked to witness.
Meanwhile, Kamala's VP, Tim Walz, is being accused of lying about his rank, which is called stolen valor. But in Walz's defense in Minneapolis, stealing is legal. But misrepresenting your past for political gain? I don't see that as a problem, said one woman.
And when the pressure hits, Tim Walz doesn't just pivot. He pirouettes like a ballerina wired on 5 Red Bulls and a lifetime subscription to The Atlantic. Ask him about crime exploding across Minnesota, and suddenly he's rambling about how bike lanes will magically reduce felonies. Mention the economy circling the drain, and he shifts into a sermon on gender-neutral parking lots and the emotional toll of asphalt management. This isn't leadership. It's interpretive policy theater, complete with TED Talks on feelings and PowerPoints about healing communities through ukulele circles. Gutfeld skewered it perfectly, calling Walz a human magic 8-ball in orthopedic shoes. Shake him, and the answer is always some muddled jargon about intersectional frameworks, or equity gardening. And then there's the branding. Walz struts around like a down-home farm dad, but his idea of roughing it is sipping almond milk without a paper straw. He's the guy who shows up to a tailgate with kombucha and asks if the brisket is locally sourced. Gutfeld nailed him with surgical precision. Walz is about as folksy as tofu at a monster truck rally, quoting Noam Chomsky in a fleece vest while pretending he's one of the people.
Video of the day, and he's got a very weird way of greeting his wife of 30 years. Roll it. I want to see this in slow motion. You'll see Walz extends his hand to his wife. She grabs it. They shake. He pulls her close and then goes in for that non-friction hug, all the while still shaking her hand. I wish there was a word to describe that. Oh, yeah, weird. I've seen warmer embraces between Chris Christie and a salad.
Minnesota's rural towns are crying out like someone stuck on hold trying to cancel dial-up in the year 2025. They wanted a leader who understood real life, tractors, long work days, maybe a church potluck or two. But instead, they got Tim Walz, a man who seems to believe greater Minnesota starts at the edge of a bike lane and ends where the kombucha taps run dry. This isn't leadership. It's lifestyle branding with extra buzzwords, governing like he's live streaming a TED Talk called Empathy Through Bureaucracy. Gutfeld's knockout punch? He crowned Walz the IKEA governor. He comes in a box, half the screws are missing, assembly required, and by the end you're crying over a wobbly mess wondering if you built a metaphor. And he was dead right. Walz treats policy like a Pinterest board, convinced governing is just hashtags, oat milk, and interpretive dance routines. Gutfeld saw through it all with X-ray precision, dismantling every bloated bill, every word salad speech, every sanctimonious sermon posing as leadership. He turned Walz's oatmeal-flavored brand of governance into a soggy pile of mediocrity. And the saddest part? Walz probably walked away thinking it was a TED Talk tribute. Minnesota deserves more than a glorified group project in khakis, and Gutfeld, with punchlines sharper than a DMV pencil, reminded the nation that behind the fleece vest and that passive-aggressive grin stands a governor reading expired IKEA instructions, confused, underwhelming, and missing half the screws.